Hello and welcome to the Sky Blue Times YouTube channel. Today I wanted to talk about the win against Napoli and what was a much better performance, a much cleaner, sharper performance from the players on the pitch compared to the United game, despite some of the impressive kind of individual displays in the derby. I think coming away from this match, even with the red card in mind, before that as well as after that, to see the team be much more cohesive, much more clean on the ball, tidy when it comes to counter pressing, winning the duels, recycling possession. I think across the board it was just a much more encouraging performance ahead of a tough game at the weekend against Arsenal. To see Rodri look a lot more like the Rodri that we've come to know, to Phil continue to build momentum on his performance against United. Same follows for Jeremy Doku. I think Erling Haaland has continued this kind of form that we've seen throughout all of the opening fixtures. So when you're moving all the way across the team, I think there's a lot to be able to take away from this performance, even though you've got to take in that factor of going down, opposition going down to 10 men, and how the kind of game did swing from being something where you were looking to see how City pressed and were good in and out of possession, whereas once we moved to then defending after the red card, to have a good look at how City managed to break down that opposition defence that are sat really quite deep. So we just move over to this one here. This is City out of possession in that kind of 4-1-4-1. In this though, Bernardo Silva is tucked inside as he's following McTominay. It's worth mentioning in this game that Bernardo Silva and Phil swap roles in and out of possession. So in possession, Bernardo Silva is that right winger. Phil Foden has the freedom to move inside and essentially acts as the midfielder. But then out of possession, Phil becomes a kind of right forward. They did have, and as you can see by Phil in this game, they did want either Doku or Foden when they could to push up into a 4-4-2 to support Haaland and push the opposition team over to lock them onto one side. When they could do, there were a couple of times where I thought Doku did a good job to intercept the passes on that left-hand side. Once Phil pushes up, Napoli goes to try and shift it over to their right-hand side, City's left, and Doku was able to intercept a couple of passes there. Win back possession. Ryan, as you can already see, is making his way up to apply pressure as soon as he's seen passes being made across as well. So even though like limited minutes in this game, we did just get a little bit of flavour of some of the improvements they were making out of possession, just to look a little bit more sharp, jumping on the right press triggers at the right time. Big test the weekend against Arsenal. I think a lot of people are concerned, have questions about kind of different areas, and I think there's a lot of kind of valid things in the personnel and the new team and an experiment early on in the season that's just not been factored into that. But Arsenal are a very well drilled team, a lot more stable than this team is right now. Similar to how City after several years have just got kind of every kind of setup, system, structure, etc. kind of like bedded into a lot of those players. Arsenal are at that point now compared to what City's at the moment, so we'll get a good look at that. A team that, if there is significant holes, should be able to exploit it. But the main thing from this game for me is that kind of desire and sharpness in possession from the players that I think, regardless of how you set up out of possession, if you don't have that, you're going to struggle against Arsenal at the weekend. So really good to see that in this game. Come to pressing, we saw a couple of things tried out. One thing that you kind of noticed from the first couple of games that Rodri's been back and playing in is him not kind of having so much involvement in the press. Perhaps you're thinking if they're kind of using him more zonal, but then when you are watching the games, you don't see him dropping into the back line like Nico did so well in the opening couple of games. You didn't see him back up the press like just so used to from Rodri in previous seasons. So in this one, you saw Silva having to cover the distance to jump De Bruyne or to jump the left back of Napoli. So then Phil Foden was then just looking to apply pressure onto the Napoli left centre back and then come around. And we saw in the kind of opening 15 to 20 minutes leading up to the red card, that kind of situation play out where teams are trying to find the right distance between the two. Silva's trying to find the right distance. Napoli kind of playing around, moving around with that. Once Silva then jumps out to the left back, then Rodri backs him up, jumps up to press De Bruyne. And we did see throughout this match, as well as before the red card, Rodri just a lot more proactive in the press, whether it's jumping up, dropping back, moving outside to track a runner and support when they're locking on to one side. So I'd expect that to continue against Arsenal compared to those games against Brighton and United, where he was a little bit less involved. But yeah, be interesting to see, and obviously that kind of manages the +1 situation to back a little bit better by doing this, not having the fullbacks jump to then shift the back line across, and quickly you can find yourself in a 3v3, or opposition can put another player up and it's a 4v3 in favour of them. So managing those situations is going to be quite important against Arsenal. I think you saw good kind of steps in the right direction in this match, but with the red card we just didn't get a kind of proper look over a full 90 minutes. But yeah, just interesting to see. Wanted to point that out. We move over in possession. Continuation of Jeremy Doku and Nico O'Reilly having that relationship where one of them holds the width, one's allowed to move inside. As you can see here, Doku inside, taking on to come inside and try to play a pass to the likes of Foden and Reinders. Those two looking to try and find space between the lines. Worth mentioning just specifically on Haaland, if you see him across the opening few games, and this will be something to watch against Arsenal, because in previous games he's been so tight that it almost becomes a wrestling match between him and Gabriel, is that he's keeping kind of 2-3 yards between him and the other central defenders, giving him a question of whether you do go and whether you leave it. Does the midfielder track it, or do I track it as the defender? To just pose more questions, and City in this match before and after the red card were much better at positioning themselves between the lines to just give Napoli players a question like, whose man is that? Is that mine as the midfielder, as Lobotka, as De Bruyne, or is that the central defender's job to pick up? Just kind of giving them kind of like a little bit of confusion in that defensive structure of Napoli. Kusanov and Bernardo Silva on that right hand side. We did see more in the first half. Kusanov finding himself in positions higher up as a right winger holding width, and then, as I'll show a bit later on with another graphic with Bernardo Silva, his touch map changed from the first half to the second half, and he became exclusively on the right, and Kusanov exclusively as that right centre back. So they just defined that position a lot cleaner in the second half, which then was a lot more helpful in terms of dealing with transition kind of moments, or times they needed to counter press, but then also having the right personnel out there to be able to receive the ball, recycle it, or look to progress towards the box with Bernardo Silva, versus Kusanov is just looking for that back pass, or doesn't quite have the quality to be able to cross the ball like another fullback would. Two centre backs in Gvardiol. Diaz, Rodri would drop quite a few times into the back line when need be to provide that +1. If we just move over to this one here, so yeah, as I mentioned, Silva looking to provide that width over on this side, Rodri dropping back when need be. It gives the opportunity for Gvardiol to push up. If they're able to draw Højlund onto Rodri, onto Diaz, then that leaves space for Gvardiol to drive into, and then the midfielder has to wonder, do I need to go cover Gvardiol, or do I need to drop back? If I go and cover him, then I'm going to open up more space, then he's able to play a pass and find somebody between the lines. So just all those kind of like little details there just stood out in this match. Obviously a continuation of what we saw against United, but then this time against a team that in possession sets up in a 4, and then out of possession sets up more into a 5, so you would have a midfielder drop back. Anguissa, I think, in particular, was quite good in this match at doing that. They always wanted to maintain Napoli, to have 3 defenders covering the near post, central space, and the far post. So then the guy on the far post is not too fussed about Bernardo Silva at that back post, not really being much of a danger. Then they could, from there, look to have their fullback and their winger go 2v1 against Doku if he's out wide on this space on the box. So you'd have those two out here, and then, for example, you'd have Lobotka would come over, come into the half space with Anguissa. So you've got these two guys in the half space here, and then you've still got the 3 centre backs in the middle. And then you'd have De Bruyne and McTominay that would be on the top of the box there to be able to deal with second balls, apply pressure if City try and move it quickly across the top of the box. And that was their kind of plan, at least with 11, so that Doku always had 2 guys to try and bypass, although he did a few times manage to get past them to the byline and win a corner or get across to the back post. And then also to have Lobotka and Anguissa in the half space, so that even if you did bypass those 2v1s, you had somebody there, and also if O'Reilly wanted to make that kind of run into the half space, into the box, there's players to track them, to pick them up. So it was much more difficult to try and find space from Doku's perspective on that side. But then the flip from that is that it meant that this kind of top space at the top of the box, you saw Reinders pick it up, take a shot, Vardiol pick it up, take a shot, and players were having some success from there because Napoli were focused on trying to defend the half space inside the penalty box, that they just weren't quick to kind of jump out. And then only having those two players here, there were occasions where City, once they moved the ball quick enough, could get the ball into good shooting positions on the top of the penalty box. And then once we moved into the second half, first half of the red card, and then into the second half, those situations just become easier because Napoli then had Conte decided only to have one player in the half space to then maintain the players on top of the box, maintain a 2v1 against Jeremy Doku. So that kind of focus on him, if he is out wide, although they didn't really use Doku lots, keeping that 2v1 there, one guy in the half space, then meant the guy that we were talking about, Nico O'Reilly, as well as Reinders and Foden, etc., trying to find that half space inside the box. Only had one guy to track them, so it was much easier for them to find space. You think about some of the passes Doku was able to play from the side of the box into that space, in the half space in the box, which would have been like here. I think Reinders had a shot. O'Reilly was found in this space as well for a shot. So yeah, good stuff. And because you lost that man, it just made it easier for them to find that, as well as them in the second half, once they moved the ball a little bit quicker, find space along the top of the box. 4 players to take shots there. Foden had one. I think O'Reilly had another one. So yeah, good stuff. And then crosses as well. I thought they mixed it up quite well to have the likes of Diaz doing some balls kind of curled to the back post. So you had those. You had Bernardo Silva trying to play some crosses over here. Obviously, you had the corners where Phil Foden created a number of chances. There was a second phase corner that created a good header. Nico O'Reilly had a good header as well that was saved. Really good save by Milinkovic. Savic, that one just getting a fingertip across. So yeah, lots of good stuff. I think in the game, this is something that City struggled last season significantly to do, to break down a team that was in a low block. When you think about playing against Inter Milan at the start of last season, I think we've got that important lesson in the Champions League that you must win the home games. Teams will come after you, and you cannot settle for a draw. And I remember coming away from that Inter Milan game thinking, that's a good point. Tough team to break down. They did pose some kind of threat on the break with Taremi, I think it was. So yeah, in that you kind of felt, okay, point seems okay. But in hindsight, the way the Champions League played out in the league phase, not a good point. You needed to win that game. You needed to find a way through that opposition block. And in this one, before and after the red card, I think they had a lot of good ideas they were probing and trying out. And eventually they found that space once they moved the ball quick enough. So, do have to mention this save. I think we saw in the United game how important that save was against Mbeumo, just to not make sure the momentum doesn't swing in favour of the opposition team. This was a really good save by Donnarumma, just getting across. I think Kusanov is not able to get up and win that header. Guy gets on the top of him, and yeah, Donnarumma is able to get away and push that away, make that save. As soon as the ball comes over, he already knows the guy who's going to take the header, and he's already shifting across, dropping back a touch to be in a position to make that save. And these are just the kind of key moments that you do that, you kind of kill any sort of bit of momentum the opposition team could have had. This would have been their opening goal, and you think if they get this one, then City still get that red card. They have something to really kind of defend and get behind the ball, and come away possibly with 3 points. And if City only score a goal, that's a draw, 1-1, and then not a good result. So really important moment for him to make that save. I saw the quotes by Bernardo and Roger recently where they were saying how you felt on the pitch that, a little bit like Quartar, Bernardo says, that he needed to, the United players that is, needed to put the ball right in the corner to be able to score. So that kind of confidence he's given to the back line, as well as all the communication, is really, really important and good to see. And then this is the lead up to the red card. So Donnarumma plays that long pass. Worth noting, Napoli, they didn't press Donnarumma because and my guess is they didn't think he was a threat to progress the ball. Whether Arsenal do that, I don't know. I think Arsenal might try and put pressure directly on him to try and force a mistake, and then it just means the game will play a little bit more long for them. But in this one, Napoli weren't pressing Donnarumma aggressively and directly, which gave him the invitation to play some of these long passes. So he does play that over the top into Haaland. Haaland, good battle with the defender. Defender's size to try and get something on it rather than worry about where that ball's going to go. So he ends up heading it down into this space here. Phil Foden quickly onto it, is able to get a touch, and then is able to play that pass through to Erling Haaland. This is the moment he plays that pass. I think it's good to look at Haaland making that kind of display of give me that ball and I'm going to make the run. Here's the space to play it into. Jeremy Doku slow down to give Phil an option if he did want to play it across. Kusanov already making that run behind. That's good to see. Coming in his first couple of games as a right back, but then already making really good runs ahead of the ball, as you can see there. And then I think what partly kind of makes this red card happen is the movement of Haaland. So you can see here he's ready to attack that space down the middle, but as soon as the ball gets played and it's outside the boot from Phil, brilliant pass around the defender, Haaland also immediately runs around the back of the defender. So then he's just suddenly losing track, needs to get something on the ball to try and stop it, doesn't know where Haaland's gone, and then that just feeds into that confusion. So yeah, ball goes all the way through the middle and around to Erling Haaland. Defender doesn't get a touch, takes him out, red card, easy done. And if Haaland was still able to get that, then I think there's a good chance that he scores. Probably goes around him rather than trying to chip. I thought initially actually the goalkeeper was much closer from the first time I viewed it, but then watching back with this angle, Haaland would have had more than enough time to be able to go around the keeper and score this one. This is the graphic I mentioned a bit earlier in terms of the difference of Bernardo Silva in the first half and the second half. So as you can see here, a lot more kind of movement inside, moving into midfield, and then even on the right hand side, he's not properly on the touchline receiving the ball. Whereas if you look at this one down the bottom, he is always along the touchline, holding that width, stretching the opposition back line. Obviously, breaking down a team that's gone down to 10 men makes sense, but that kind of switch with Kusanov to make sure that Bernardo was always the guy holding the width wide on that side, and Kusanov was deeper, I think was the right call, rather than to bring somebody in off the bench, a Bob, a Savino, etc., and try and attack down that right hand side. It just meant they were stretching the opposition, but then still very focused on the route they wanted to find into the opposition penalty box to create chances, which was the finding the space between the lines on the top of the box, finding the kind of half space with Doku, O'Reilly, etc., and then kind of drawing players in to open up space back into that left half space, whether it is Reinders for his shots and so on, which we'll get onto with the second goal. So this is on the second goal. Napoli actually make a mistake by trying to press too high in the throw-in. Kusanov throws it all the way over the top to O'Reilly, who's then able to carry the ball a third of the length of the pitch. As you can see, all the Napoli players are now trying to get back to be in some sort of good shape. Riley makes that carry, plays it quick across the Reinders. Doku obviously holding the width. Bernardo going straight, as I mentioned, to hold the width on that far side. So he fires it into Reinders. Reinders fires it straight into Rodri. And then Rodri plays it straight into Foden. As you can see, you've got Lobotka trying to get over to Phil to close that pass. And then Anguissa, who I mentioned thought did a good job, at least in the kind of like opening kind of 20 to 30 minutes tracking players. He is back to the ball, facing away, only just turning now as Rodri's playing the pass. Nowhere near Phil Foden. And that kind of moment of switching off gives Phil the space to be able to receive it between the lines on the half turn and then chip that ball over. He did mention post-match how Erling Haaland always makes that runs. I know he will definitely be there making that movement. It's just my job to play that pass. So when you have somebody like Haaland that's just so consistent with the movement that it's not a factor in his mind to wonder where's the player, where's the run that I need to pick out. He just knows I need to make a good touch and then pick my head up, because Haaland will be there ready to receive the ball. And then lovely chip and lovely cushion header from Haaland just to lift it over the top of Milinkovic-Savic. Got a lot of criticism for his headers, which I think is more to do with kind of corners, 6-yard box, particularly on the kind of right hand side, kind of whipped corners that you just need to get a little touch on. Whereas this here is still top quality to be able to just cushion it slightly above the goalkeeper, and then that makes the opening goal for Man City, breaks the deadlock, and then eventually we'll get onto the second goal, which starts here. So this is the second goal. Nico O'Reilly, he plays the pass to Tijani Reinders, and then he's going to make his run into the half space, something we mentioned earlier in the video about Napoli not having enough players to track that kind of movement, as well as Jeremy Doku moving inside, kind of disrupts the opposition who are kind of building their plan around getting a 2v1 against Jeremy Doku. So and I think this is an important point, if the teams are expecting Doku to hold the width on that side and they're expecting to set up with a 2v1, it gives them a very kind of easy reference point to set up their defensive structure quite easily and quite quickly. Whereas if he's moving inside, you've then got more confusion about, okay, the guy we were planning to have a 2v1 against on that left-hand side, the winger, is not there. So then who are we tracking? Who needs to track who? Who's following him inside, and so on. And just that kind of level of disruption from his movement helps a lot in this case, and it helps City to be able to find ways into the box. So he plays that pass to Tijani Reinders. O'Reilly makes his run into the box. Good decision from him. Reinders then initiates the 1-2. I think last season when I was looking at some of the numbers for initiated and completed 1-2s, Reinders was one of like the top 5 or top 10 for 1-2s initiated per 90 in Europe's top 5 leagues. So no surprise to see him do that in this situation here. Plays the pass to Jeremy Doku, continues his run across, expecting to get that pass back. So does Aguisa, as you can see he's going with Reinders. And for a player that I've seen get a lot of really poor criticism about how intelligent he is, and we saw against United, to scan, to find a space behind Agate, to hold it there. Whereas you look at Jack Grealish when he played in midfield previous season, he'd, particularly in the Juventus game, he'd go into that space, but then he'd get drawn to the ball, come closer. And I remember in that game, there's plenty of examples of Vardiol pointing to Grealish to go into the space and stay in the space. Yeah, Jeremy Doku did that brilliantly against United to find a space and then stay in it and not get drawn towards the ball, and give yourself the room to be able to turn. In this example here, in the lead up to his goal, really smart to have his body open facing towards Reinders, faking as if he's going to play that pass back and complete the 1-2. And then obviously he quickly turns around into the space in a position that you'll want to try and find Doku more consistently this season. If he's able to beat a central defender 1v1, or even if he's able to beat the fullback 1v1 in this situation, he's got past them, he's in the box, and he's in a position to shoot against the keeper. You think about his 2v1s out on the wide kind of side of the box, left side of the box. If he beats a guy, he's probably got another central defender coming across to close that pass, cutback, etc. into the box away. So then he's got another player to trying to either beat or get a pass past. In this one here, as soon as he beats that defender 1v1, he's just got to take the shot against the goalkeeper. So he comes in, O'Reilly being there just pulls the fullback slightly away so he's not going to get directly involved. Beats the central defender 1v1 and then scores with his left foot here. I believe he's got 2 goals with his left foot this season, one with Belgium in a recent game against Kazakhstan, and then this goal you're seeing right here on your screen. He's not, before those 2 goals, not scored a goal with his left foot since the game against Metz for Reims in 2023, which was just before he moved to City. I think it was one of the couple games he played in Ligue 1 before he then made the move to Manchester City. But you think about these kind of positions, how often can you remember Doku being in those across the last 2 seasons? Yeah, inside the box, he's got the striking ability to be able to finish with his left foot, with his right foot to curl it round. But you just need to get him into these positions more regularly. If he doesn't have to always hold the whip, he has the freedom to move inside because Nico O'Reilly is able to do that and they kind of interchange with one another. Then you're going to find Doku throughout a game pick up these positions, and then they're just going to be, when you're talking about where you want to take shots from inside the box, that's a great spot to take it. Just coming into the inside here and then taking a shot, not a great spot. Just on the top of the box here, not the best spot. But then if you're getting Jeremy Doku inside the penalty box towards the middle, much better place for him to take that shot. So giving him the freedom to move inside, you will eventually see him in these better positions consistently across the season and across the match. And then here's just to have a look at the penalty box entries in that match. As you can see, a lot coming through that left half space on the left hand side of the pitch. 11 entries on the left, 9 down the middle in the centre, and then 4 from the right hand side. And then even those from the right, those would have been crosses over the top into the box, rather than players carrying it in, or those kind of like little short passes. And so it brings me back to the point I was mentioning towards the start of the video. With Bernardo Silva, I saw people at halftime talking about, do we need to bring in a player for Bernardo, or do we move Kusanov to right centre back, take off Diaz, bring on a right back like Mateus Nunes that can overlap, when actually the focus wasn't to try and get into the box from the right hand side and the left hand side. It was, you just needed your right winger to do his job of stretching the opposition back line, holding the width, because the focus was trying to get into the box on the left hand side with that relationship between Jeremy Doku, Reinders and O'Reilly, and then also finding players in the middle like Phil Foden in dangerous positions from passes from Rodri and so on. That was what they wanted to do, laser focus in the second half, and they were able to find their way through. The 2 goals, the 2 examples of the different ways that they were trying to break through Napoli and break down their defensive block. Here's just all of the actions from Jeremy Doku in the game. As you can see, he pops up a lot on the right hand side, in the middle, a few different touches, a lot more in the half space as well. You see all those passes there into that left half space. You've got to take advantage of them as City players. Remember last season there was a lot of occasions of players getting the ball here but then not being able to play the cross or play the cute pass and so on. But Doku can draw players in there 2v1 and then give you a lot of space on the edge of the box to be able to do something. So that's something to watch across the course of the season. But yeah, really good performance by Jeremy Doku. Yeah, just really, really good. Hope to see it continues. I think injuries was a big factor for him across the first couple of seasons to kind of get some proper rhythm. I think decision making has improved. I think slowing down in the final third is something that Phil Foden's mentioned that he needed to do, and he's doing that really, really well this season. And then also I think he has much more to give. So we talked about him playing inside, half spaces, pockets, etc. But then also in the build-up to be able to hold the ball up, give the team a way to progress the ball down that left-hand side. And then also his ball carrying. He's incredible as a ball carrier to be able to progress the team and move them into the final third. So I think there's a lot more to come from Jeremy Doku. It's not just about can he beat a player 1v1. And we've seen in these last couple of games he can do a lot more with all of his kind of qualities and give a lot more to the team. And hopefully we can see that continue over the course of this season. And then this is just non-penalty expected goals plus expected assisted goals divided by penalty area touches. So I believe this season Doku was around 6.6 or 6.9 penalty area touches per 90. When he was at Rons, that was around 6 to 7 penalty area touches per 90. And then at City, that's gone up between, I think it was 12 in the 23-24 season, and then 10 per 90 last season for City. But the amount of expected goals and expected assisted goals he got per 90 and across the season was much lower. So then when you're doing that pair touch in the penalty box, it really does drop last season. So at least from what we've seen, and again, stress, very small sample size, but from what we have seen, looks to be a guy that's getting more efficient in the box. So when you're coming in, really inside that penalty box, you want to have 2-3 touches, 1 touch and a shot. That's the kind of one thing you want to see from your wingers, that they are decisive once they get in there. You think with Jeremy Doku with this goal, is very much takes the touch inside, beats his man with 1 touch, ball runs, takes a shot with his left foot. So very, very efficient. You don't want a player that's coming in and dribbling in the box. You think about when Savinho last season was kind of cutting inside, moving into the box, and then he was taking touch after touch after touch as he's trying to move away from a player to get separation, when actually he just shouldn't have gone into the box in the first place, or once you've got in, you should have then took the shot, played the pass, etc. And that's what we're seeing from Doku in better positions, as we mentioned earlier about inside towards the middle of the box and closer to the 6-yard box. That's one thing. And then also just being a lot more efficient with his touches, minimal kind of touches in the box, which is good to see. And then, yeah, Phil Foden, I think another really good performance, more of him playing in the middle. You see a lot of his kind of involvement deeper in the build-up, dropping deep, playing a quick pass rather than somebody coming to deep to collect and carry the ball. He's just coming there to be able to link play, make cute little passes, and also we've seen this kind of season in these first couple of games that playing him in midfield will expand his passing range. So you'll see more switches. I think he has more switches this season than he did all of last season already. So you're seeing more long balls, more crosses, more switches, etc. from Phil Foden once he's playing in these kind of central spaces when we're in possession. Obviously being on corners I think is a good thing as well. Somebody that can really provide some whip and pace on that ball when he is crossing into the box. And this is the most chances he's created in a single match. And although I think 4 of those chances are from corners, one's from second phase corner, and then the rest from open play. Really good stuff from Phil Foden. Player that is ready to be that difference maker across an entire season consistently. He looks like he's ready to do that. And I would just say, compared to Phil of 23-24, who was more a player that I felt like could be decisive in the final third, what we've seen in these last couple of games is that this version of Phil, at the same kind of a level in terms of being that kind of difference maker, but has the capability to be more influential across the team, across all of the pitch, across all the phases, all the thirds, which is just really, really exciting to see. So we just move over to the end. This is kind of all my thoughts on the match. I think a very encouraging performance, even bearing in mind that you were dealing with a team that went down to 10 men after 20 minutes. I think in the first 20 minutes, a lot of good signs in possession, out of possession. I think good kind of little subtle changes from Guardiola. As I mentioned with Bernardo Silva, I think the team probed really well, tried different stuff out. Wasn't just looking to kind of spam crosses from one side or just persist with 1v1 take-ons from one exact spot on the pitch on the left side, like we saw from the team in different games last season. They did just try lots of different ideas out. Did have some threat from set pieces as well, which we struggled to do last season. So yeah, all in all, I think good performance, encouraging performance. Big test on the weekend against Arsenal. That'll give you a real good indicator of where this team stacks up in terms of competing for the title or not, where the holes are out of possession, how bad are they, how much can we read into them from previous games. We'll get a much better idea against Arsenal, and I think the kind of final point for me is the team does look kind of sharp, full of energy, and ready for a game that will be huge on the weekend, and that's the best thing really to see going into that match. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. Please let me know down below your thoughts, and I'll jump in the comments, reply, and we can have that kind of discussion. Please make sure you like the video, help support the channel, subscribe so you don't miss out on the next video, and we'll be back with plenty more content this week.